I had no idea the British press was so bigoted.
This one's wife. She is ridiculous. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Well, you may not have recovered from the cringe that you've experienced in relation to my first video. I make no apologies, but you're going to get a double dosage today, as there's yet more cringeworthy behaviour from the ridiculous this one's wife, exhibiting the disconnect between the way that she sees the world and the way that everybody sees her. It comes courtesy of Eve Buckland, writing for the Daily Mail, who explains, Mindy Kaling has left fans cringing after revealing this one's wife's ridiculous advice for hosting kids' parties. What experience does this one's wife have in the world of being the hostess with the mostess? Well, we know that she thinks that she's some fantastic party, be it children or dinner, organiser, that she is playing at being this kind of trad wife stroke hostess stroke celebrity, whereby operating in the bubble that her narcissism places around her, she thinks that everybody's interested in her top tips, more about that later, in respect of how to throw parties. This time, the focus is on children's parties. This one's wife purportedly has 2 children, although they are rarely seen. We have witnessed hitherto 2 pictures released in relation to the children's birthdays, where cake was seen and there was a little bit of a performance put on. There were no other guests. It was simply performative for the purposes of then leaking the photograph to show, look, here we are, celebrating with Archie or celebrating with Lilibet in respect of their birthday. A little while ago, you'll recall that there was the shot of various, I think, balloons outside the property to suggest that a party was going on inside, although no further evidence of that was actually provided. This one's wife has an idea of what a kid's party should be like, and it is not what a kid would want. Anyway, let's get back to what the article explains and find out what her ridiculous advice is. Kaling, who appears on this one's wife's upcoming Netflix show With Love, Meghan, gushed over the former working royal's expertise at throwing children's parties in a chat with Time. She said, I think a misconception about this one's wife is that she's in any way fussy or has expectations of fanciness. She really is a down-to-earth person who knows a lot of fun tricks to make entertaining and cooking easier. Mindy, I think you've been on the crack pipe. I think what you've got confused is that this one's wife knows lots of fun tricks for entertaining men, that she's down to earth in the sense of being basic, but she's pretentious. I think you've got it all a bit muddled up there. Kaling said that the pair had met when she was on maternity leave after welcoming her 3rd child, with this one's wife texting her to ask if she wanted to come for a meal at the Montecito mansion she shares with Prince Harry for her new show. So, just wait a moment. Mindy Kaling's there. She's on maternity leave. Maybe she's there with a child, breastfeeding. She's had a bit of a sleepless night. The old nipples are sore. And all of a sudden, beep, beep, the phone goes. Who's this? Unrecognised number. Hi. Duchess of Sussex here. Would you like to come for a candlelight supper at my Montecito mansion? How about 8 p.m. tonight? As ever, this one's wife. Did she just fucking text her out of the blue? It wouldn't be a surprise if she did. That's the kind of intrusive behaviour that the narcissist that is this one's wife engages in. Not recognising the boundaries, getting Kaling's number, presumably from her agent, and then just pinging her a text saying, do you want to come round for dinner? Well, Kaling evidently agreed. She was asked if she picked up any hosting tips. Kaling said, spoiler alert, I did. Can you imagine how that went? This one's wife saying, have you ever thought about doing this? The theme was throwing a party for children. Now, wait. So you went round for a meal, and then all of a sudden the theme became throwing a party for children. That was the theme of dinner, was it? That doesn't make sense. So this story, I suspect, is part of the, psst, Mindy, can you make it known that I'm really good at giving tips for children's parties so that I can expand my forthcoming range moving into the arena of top tips for kids' parties? I understand the Middletons did rather well at this with their party pieces. They made a lot of money from it. So if they could do it, I'm sure I can. Copy. But Kaling said, spoiler alert, I did. The theme was throwing a party for children. I love cooking, but I'm not really good at entertaining. There maybe will be many people that would agree with that. I don't know anything about how you're not supposed to use overhead lighting when people come over. You're supposed to use little lamps. Yeah, that's the major consideration, isn't it, when you're entertaining? Not what shall we have to eat? How much alcohol shall I get in? Who's going to be sat next to who? How many guests are we going to have? What background music should we be playing? Should we just serve a main course? Should we ensure that there is a starter also? Does anybody have any allergies? What time should we start at? When do you think the guests will leave? Should we keep the kids or send them off to your mum and dad's? Oh, don't forget the lighting! Really? It's really simple. What you probably do is think, yeah, the big light, that's going to be too harsh. So we won't have that switched on. We will have some mood lighting from the lamps around us. It's not difficult. Are you seriously suggesting, Kaling, that you, when your guests come round, you switch on a spotlight above them, the Super Trooper, and they are drenched in dazzling light going, oh, my eyes, I can't see. Where is my prawn starter gone? Oh, sorry, I've accidentally pronged you with my fork. It's ridiculous. This either makes Mindy Kaling look really stupid, or the fact is that this just didn't happen. That she didn't know about these overhead lighting. Basically, this one's wife has said, psst, one of my top tips is to use little lamps, particularly when it's children's parties, because that's what they're really concerned about. Ambience. They're not interested in jelly and ice cream. They're not interested about charging around a soft play centre. The birthday boy or girl isn't interested in gifts. The children aren't interested in playing pass the parcel or pin the tail on the donkey or whatever the modern equivalent of that is. They don't want to engage in firing guns at one another, doing paintball or whatever. No, what the kids are really concerned about is, Mummy, don't put the big light on. It hurts my eyes. It's ridiculous. But this one's wife, said Kaling, just knows how to do that stuff. For kids' parties, I usually just go to the party supply store and get paper things. That seems fairly sensible to me, which I don't judge, and neither does she. But it was fun to learn simple ways to do a homemade kids' party. She added that mother of two, this one's wife, had gifted her a basket of fresh produce and homemade jam. After all, jam is her jam. And hot sauce, because she knew I loved hot sauce. She's a very generous woman who knew I needed a break. A break from what? Maternity leave. So you need a break from being on leave, do you? That makes sense. Furthermore, this one's wife with a basket of fresh produce, mimicking other people, and naturally that's bribery because it's not genuine. It's done by a narcissist to triangulate you with that object to make them seem like they're kind and caring. The hosting tip was widely blasted by fans as out of touch. One wrote, sure, that advice works if you own a $15 million mansion, but for the average Joe, they wouldn't do that. Gosh, this thing sounds so out of touch. If you artfully place lamps around your home rather than using, I don't know, the light switch to turn the lights on, please let me know. Somebody else commented, totally clueless. Do they not understand how silly and ridiculous that sounds? Why can't you use overhead lighting? I need to see what the kids are doing. This one's wife does not have a maternal bone in her body. Others wrote, are the little boys in smoking jackets and the girls in pearls whilst eating canapes? What kind of party is this? Another wrote, so the average person on an average income is supposed to go out and buy a bunch of lamps and then try and find somewhere to store them. Give me a break. Never throughout my child's childhood have I used lamps at his birthday parties. Given that the parties are, as ever, thrown during the day and my home has windows which allow natural light from the sun, lamps are not a thing. If we've ever needed another light source, we, as ever, simply turn the lights on. This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard pertaining to children's birthday parties. It's not as though it's a romantic dinner for two. Gee, I just threw a few balloons, hung a sign in my house. I don't have extra lamps to place around. Where do these two come from? If this advice is for the rich and famous, they should have a group meeting in their mansions. Because little kids on a sugar high will obliterate those random lamps in a New York second. Slammed by the various comments that have appeared on X, which is hardly a surprise. The fact is that this once again demonstrates that not only is this one's wife out of touch, that Mindy Kaling might have been on the crack pipe, but that this one's wife thinks that these tips are interesting, useful, commendable, which demonstrates once again just how deluded she is. To a degree, it put me in mind of Pippa Middleton. You may recall that Pippa Middleton came out with a book with various top tips for hosting, and it was full of stating the obvious along the lines of put drinks in a fridge beforehand to cool them down, and knives and forks for your guests will make eating easier, and seats make an ideal way of taking the weight off your guests' feet. Now, she didn't write those things, but she wrote the equivalent of them, which caused people to just shake their heads thinking, this woman hasn't a clue. And it's similar for this one's wife. This one's wife is trying to make herself happen as this glorious entertainer, that she is the doyenne of dinner parties, the inspiration behind successful children's parties. And what's the best thing that she can come up with? Don't have the big light on, use lamps. Yeah, because every kid, when they're older, will go, gee, Mum, I'm really glad you used those little lamps when I was 8 years old. That makes for such a great party. You're the best. Yeah, of course that's what a kid's going to remember. Not only does it demonstrate that she's pretentious and deluded, it also demonstrates that she doesn't have a clue when it comes to dealing with children, something I've explained to you before, and part of the reason why the children aren't seen. She just doesn't know how to deal with them. Her suggestion also put me in mind with Viz and their top tips. Those in the United Kingdom will be familiar with Viz. I think it's still going. But it was an adult comic, so to speak, which took the piss out of the tips that were given in primarily women's magazines about, these days you would call them hacks, but things that would help you in relation to housekeeping and entertaining and mending clothing and shortcuts and all the rest of it. And they just became all the more ridiculous, all the more preposterous. And so each issue would have a few of these top tips, which basically either overcomplicated something that was really simple or created something that was just so ridiculously bizarre. Here are a few examples for your delectation. A Smarties tube filled with angry wasps can make an inexpensive vibrator. Choking on an ice cube, just pour boiling water down your throat. Drivers, avoid getting prosecuted for using your phone while driving. Simply pop your mobile inside a large shell and the police will think you are listening to the sea. Confused teenagers, kneel on your willy before having a sly one, so it feels like you're wanking someone else off. Banging two pistachio nut shells together gives the impression a very small horse is approaching. Burp the words, pardon me, to save time. Can't afford expensive cords? Simply sellotape spaghetti to a normal pair of jeans. Stop the neighbour's dog or cat from pooping on your lawn by planting landmines. This one's wife's advice on parties would not look out of place in relation to Viz's top tips. Once again, she demonstrates what a ridiculous joke individual that she is. And having once been a member of the royal family, with all of the opportunities that presented, it is not only delicious to see this downward spiral as it gathers pace, but also it enables people to see just how useless she is, how deluded she is, how pretentious she is. And as ever, this is driven by her narcissism, which tells her that she is this brilliant children's entertainer, that she's fantastic at organising parties, that she doesn't realise that this advice is not only inappropriate, but it just looks downright stupid. And yet she has to get Mindy Kaling to pump this out for her, demonstrating what a complete lack of awareness she has. And once again, I'll remind you, it is this that is going to prove her undoing, because without the guardrails that have been there in place previously, you're going to see more and more of this unhinged behaviour. Many people might think, has she completely lost it? Well, she never had it to begin with. Is she mentally ill? Well, not in the sense of being completely psychotic. This is just her narcissism. And because she's basic and lacks talent, she hasn't got anything to back it up. Before, she was held back or held within. Although you got to see plenty of her behaviour, which enabled you to understand that it was her narcissism in action, you weren't getting the really out there stuff because the relevant people would prevent her from venting this, would prevent her from being able to air those ideas. Now, because she's gone back to being an influencer and she uses Instagram, there's nothing to stop the slops of her mind just spilling out there. And so it's not like there's been a deterioration in her condition. This is what she's like all of the time. We've just not been able to see it all because certain powers that be have managed to keep it under wraps. Now you're getting the full effect of the basic ridiculousness of this one's wife in full effect. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.